Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to episode 14 of Busy Playing Something. I am your host for this evening, Joshua LaRosa, joined by Sean Harron. Sean, how are you?
Good, thank you very much, Josh. I'm not sure for those of you who are listening or watching, but this is take two, and he had a really great question, and I was going into a nice little spiel, giving an answer to it, and instead he realized he was screwing it up, and it wasn't recording, and we've had to start again, and he's opened up with the, "How are you?"
How are you? Nice and simple,
We've,
keeping it
we're,
clean, you know?
we're giving the absolute quality content to our listeners while we keep all of the absolute crap to ourselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%, the absolute bare minimum. Now, this channel's kind of seen a few random videos over the past few weeks. We've actually been apart for nearly 3 weeks. So this is going to be kind of our general catch up, what's been going
Feels like a
on.
month.
It
Feels like
has
a month.
it has felt like a month. So I recorded a video on PlayStation 5 Pro and I think some of the Switch 2 rumored handheld announcements. Yeah, that would have been about 3 weeks ago, and that was right before my trip to Japan. So to catch everybody up, we're a fortnightly podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Busy Playing Something. We're available on podcast feeds such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So just search us up at Busy Playing Something. And while you're there, give us a nice 5-star review and say something nice about my hair or something like that. But yeah, so in short, we both had some time, I guess, leave. It's like you're at a job, annual leave. We both had some things going on. I was actually off in Japan for just under 3 weeks. Sean, you were away for
I was camping for a bit. Yeah.
camping
I
for
was
a
out
bit. Yeah.
with no reception, by the way.
Yeah, a
No
little hard to
reception.
do a podcast when you've got no reception.
No reception. So basically, like in order to get reception, I had to drive to the nearest town, which was about 15, 20 minutes away, which I did every morning to use the shower at a truck stop because I didn't want to use the shower that they had on premises, which was fine. But that meant that I had about 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to like check anything at all.
Mm,
And so if it's like, is this important? No, okay, I can worry about it at the end of the week.
mm,
And I'll tell you this. So I was out of reception range and I was on annual leave. Now, Josh, I'm not sure how you feel about being on annual leave. And when you are on leave, you are on leave. Therefore, work doesn't contact you. The ship can sail without you needing to man the helm or scrub the decks as cabin boys usually would.
mm.
Now, I left for this camping trip on the Saturday and I said, "Yep, I'm going to be out of reception for a week. Don't bother talking to me. See you later. I'll catch me up when I'm back."
Yeah.
So Monday,
Mm.
I have a missed call and messages from my manager.
Where are you?
On the Tuesday, I have another missed call and messages from another coworker. And it was at this stage where I'm like, I don't think they understand that I'm on annual leave and out of reception.
Mm.
And so when getting back to work, and I've gone, "Hey, so what's the go?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, no, we totally fixed the problem." It's like, yeah,
Mm.
you fixed the problem without me needing to be there or answer anything. So, Josh, when you were in Japan, how
Mm.
many work calls did you get that you had to respond?
0. So what I did,
Really?
there's always a bit of a story with me. Well, first thing I deleted. So I'll start back. I've recently started a new job, right? From July. Yeah, so about 3-4 months in. They gave me an option of either using my mobile, my current phone, or they'd give me a new one. And I was like, I've done the two phones. I can't. It was just it's so annoying. Like that's why you probably know, or you wouldn't notice, but I'm not wearing my Apple Watch. I've ditched that. It was just like I'm sick of charging my watch. I got two phones I need to charge. I got a wallet. Like there's just too much going on in these pockets, if you know what I mean. And I said no, I'll just have my phone. And they're like, okay, cool. You can install obviously like Authenticator, so I can get my emails and the Teams thing. So I've downloaded Teams, but I never did emails on my phone because I'm like, I'm not falling for that rabbit hole again. I used to be in bed looking at emails at night. I'm not doing that anymore. So I didn't even install emails on my phone. I did have Teams though, and I currently what I do now is it will automatically turn off notifications after 6:30. But I deleted the app completely when I was away. Now the funny part is when I started this job. Obviously during the interview process, they asked, "Do you have any leave planned for the next 6 months?" And I said, "Yes, I had my Japan trip through." So day one or day two, I don't know if I should be putting this out there, but anyway, we were like, all right, well, let's show you the systems, and this is where your pay is and how to put through leave, and we'll put through your leave for Japan, as a test thing. And the system wouldn't allow it because you needed to work for a certain period of time. You couldn't go negative that much. So then that was that. And then, I'm like, okay. And then it's like a few weeks before, I'm like, no one's said anything. All right. Week before. Okay. My boss is like, go enjoy your leave, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. And then the day before, nothing. So I'm like, okay. So I've gone on leave for 3 weeks. Come back. Today was my first day back. Nothing. So I'm like, awesome. Just save 3 weeks worth of annual leave that I'll use over Christmas. So, you gotta play the system a little bit. So I'm pretty lucky in the sense of, I think the work and the roles that I'm currently doing, I've got a level of freedom in the sense that I'm not needed for everything. Because I'm still new at the job, it's not like I'm the go-to guy anyway. So I was left very much alone. Like, even this morning, I messaged my boss. I'm like, hey, you want to catch up? Yeah, we'll catch up next week. It's fine. So I'm like, okay. So, like, today was just, like, catching up with things. But to answer your question, no, I didn't. Wasn't contacted, which was nice.
You don't even have leave booked in the calendar because they won't even, the system won't allow you to book that leave. So the leave's not even in the calendar and they still don't contact you?
Yeah.
Yeah, meanwhile, I've made it very clear I have to book my leave 9 to 12 months in advance.
Yeah.
I tell them, so last year we were told, okay, give us your leave from February to August. And I'm like, look, I'll do you one better. I know I'm going to be away during this time in September. And it was like, okay, yep, cool. We'll extend the leave calendar. We'll put yours in so that way you're kind of covered. It's like, yep, cool. And yet I still get contacted regarding things that it's like, you don't need me to answer these questions.
No, that's a bad habit. From their part, they shouldn't be doing that. So,
but anyway, I had my we were talking about why we've taken the time off. You were in Japan. I had my camping trip, and then I've been a little bit ill. So a little bit ill, and I know I'm a big stress head at the moment. Sometimes I'm not. Right now I am. So
talking about video games, better way to relax. So
why not?
That is a long way of answering why we've been away for the last 3 weeks. But yeah, there has been content out on YouTube. So yeah, check that out. Sean also did a once-off solo show as well, talking about some of the changes and what the heck's going on with Ubisoft and 343 now, Halo Studios, and what's going on there with their next project in Unreal. So we're keeping the YouTube content flow happening. But what we wanted to do today was basically spend the episode catching up, talking about what games we're playing. I'm going to talk a little bit about Japan because, it doesn't happen often. And then we'll go into some of the minor topics that we had put aside. But starting off with Japan, I just want to start here. I could easily live in this country of Japan. So I was there. I spent a week in Tokyo, just under 5 days in Kyoto, and then about roughly nearly a week in Osaka. It was amazing. I went with my wife and my 1-year-old, did all the, the major things you do when you're there in Japan, and went to Disney World Land. I always get it wrong and my wife tells me off. It's one of the two.
Isn't it Disneyland?
I think it's Disneyland. I think I keep calling it Disney World. It's Disneyland. We did Disneyland. My son absolutely loved that. That was really a cool moment to, get that, photo in front of the castle with Nathan and my wife. And then Universal Studios was also okay. I actually didn't think it lived up to the hype really at all. I think if it wasn't for the Nintendo Land, Super Nintendo World, sorry. See, I keep mixing the lands and worlds. Super Nintendo World part, I probably wouldn't have really enjoyed the day much. It was so packed and super busy, and Japan was surprisingly hot for the time of year. Apparently their summers was this year was 42, 43 degrees and 90% humidity. It's wild. So we were there in autumn and it was still 30, 28, 30, and still 80, 90% humidity. But yeah, Nintendo World was good to, like, I'm not the biggest Nintendo person, as you know, but obviously being a fan of the industry and being so, wrapped up in video games my entire life, I do have a legacy with the brand, even though I'm not kind of attached to absolutely everything that they do. But it was really cool to experience it. Like, it's not like a place you would go for. It's not like, the Australian theme parks are very ride driven, where I felt like both Universal and Disney World Land, whatever, was more like experience driven. So even the Nintendo stuff, it was like I went on the Yoshi ride, which is basically like a really slow trek right around Nintendo World, and it's just kind of just to see it from that level. Like, it's all super decked out, but everything's aligned, right? Like, you want to go to Toad's Cafe, you got to pre-book that. So the way it works, which is just incredible, like, it's the most Nintendo thing ever, right? So you get into Universal Studios,
Yep.
yeah, whatever. And to get into Nintendo World, you can either spend the money up front and buy like this guaranteed express pass, or in typical Nintendo fashion, you got to get into Universal, make your way to a kiosk, scan the code, and then you'll get a choice of like time allocations. So it's like a timed entry thing.
Yeah.
So instead of like a normal thing where it's like you get in and you line up, or you go in and first in, first serve, classic Nintendo thing, everything needs to be difficult. Get in, everyone's running to these kiosks, right? Like, it was madness. People were there. The park opened at 8:30. We were there at 7, and because there was so much people, they opened it at like 7:45. So imagine, like, I'm there. I said to my wife before we went in, I said, look, not to put pressure on this, all right? But if I don't get into Nintendo World, I'll be extremely disappointed, right? Like, that's like the one thing I wanted to do here in Universal. She's like, all right, we'll figure it out. So I'm in line. I'm like researching like what's the best way to get there. I'm making my I mapped out like where we need to go. Turns out, luckily, thanks to Reddit, that someone said if you connect to the Universal Wi-Fi early, like get in, log into their Wi-Fi, you can actually go on the Universal app and get your timed entry at that point. But so the way it works, to buy the timed entry, it has to be the day of your Universal, again, very Nintendo, the day of your Universal entry, and to access the Wi-Fi, it must be like geo-fenced, so you actually have to be inside the park, right?
Oh,
so basically
okay.
what happens is the line opens up, everyone's running, like, just, you can see the kids, like, or even adults, like, people dressed as, like, Mario, I'm like, I know definitely where they're going, like, just bolting. So we get in, we're, like, I've got, traveling with a 1-year-old, so, like, backpack, holding an umbrella because it's really hot, got the pram, Nate's got Nathan, and we're, like, running, and then we get in, and it was just, like, insanity. I'm like, all right, this is not going to work, like, the line for the kiosk already is huge. I'll log into the Wi-Fi and try that. And I got in. And, like, we were in, like I said, by 7:45, they opened the parks. I got a 9 o'clock entry for Nintendo World. So I'm like, fantastic. Let's do that. Get in. Another line to get in. And this is to get... I'll grab it 1 sec. Feel the air for about 30 seconds.
Feel the air for about 30 seconds. Now, yeah, Josh is grabbing the actual thing that... I think it's one of the watches or something like that you needed to get or something like that, or something that he found there.
Next thing you need, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't really need it, but I'm like, you're there, you're not going to buy this anywhere else, and it's 50 bloody Australian dollars, and it's the power-up band. So basically, every ride you can interact with and collect points or stamps and things like that. I'm like, I don't really need it, but I was actually pretty controlled in my shopping in Japan, surprisingly. I said to my wife, if I was here 10 years ago, right, without the restrictions of being a responsible adult and a wife telling you not to buy things, I would have had to send home another suitcase with the stuff because it was wild. So anyway, so we got the band, went in, experienced it. It was super hot. Could only get onto a few rides, but it was just good. I gotta admit, I nearly got emotional, like, as I entered. You go through the warp pipe, Mario's warp pipe, and the music starts playing, and then as you step out, you have like the full shot of Bowser's castle and kind of like the park itself, and the Mushroom Kingdom, and like the music kicks in, and it's like This is like unlike anything I've experienced before, because it's like we don't have anything like this for video games in the country. So it was really cool. Like we got a family photo. You can kind of see it in the corner there. And they like do like they're like, all right, we'll film on your phone for 10 seconds and you got to like jump in and out of the warp pipe and they're kind of screaming at you. I've got a little Mario statue thing that, you know, has Super Nintendo World on it. I visited Nintendo's head office, the old office, which is now where the museum is, and their new office, which was at the back of our hotel. I had no idea. We just went for a walk and I'm like, I've seen this building before. And then it turned out it was Nintendo's headquarters. Went to Nintendo store in Kyoto, Tokyo, and Osaka. I just ended up just buying like an engraved glass, like a drink glass that has Nintendo Kyoto. I wanted the Kyoto one because that's where their office was. So it was really cool. And of course, I went to PlayStation's headquarters when I was in Tokyo and got into the building, which was fun. And then was quickly told to leave.
Yeah, I would have said like they would have seen you. You'd be like, yeah, I'm here for
I'm here to see Shuhei.
I'm here for a couple of friends, just passing by, and they're like, no.
No, well, I walked in and they kind of looked at us funny because it's their corporate office, right? So there was people waiting in the waiting bay. You know, like obviously had meetings.
And you're just a bloody tourist.
I come in with the backpack, the kid, and there's like an Astrobot statue, and I quickly take a shot of. They had like a kiosk set up with like Astrobot, Returnal, and something else was playing. And then I see the Astrobot statue. I'm like, oh, I'll go get a photo with Nathan. And I you know, kind of gesture camera and like, no, like you need to leave. So we got it out of there pretty quick. But you know, not to blabber on for too long. Japan's shopping scene for video games has, I think, shrunk a lot now than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. Like, it got discovered, like, as soon as Instagram and Twitter and everything else became a thing, like, everything got taken, right? All the Westerners came and kind of purchased a lot of it. There's still so much, and I think that was the amazing thing, is, like, how much they really look after, like, their secondhand versus what the Western term secondhand is completely different.
100%.
Their secondhand is, like, the box has been opened. Like, I brought some Power Ranger stuff that was, like, brand new but secondhand, but I was pretty controlled with my shopping. Like, from a video game perspective, all I got was obviously the Nintendo stuff, which was all at the event, so I kind of had to do that. But for like a PlayStation person, all I really got was, it's in the back, I won't grab it, it's like a catalog of all the PS1 games that were released. It's like little icons and a description of them. I brought a PlayStation Pocket, which is that, you know, mini, what we were talking about when we were talking about Astrobot, how I wanted to buy one of those. I got a Cloud and Snake amiibo, kind of PlayStation, but Nintendo, obviously. And then just some Final Fantasy stuff. I brought like a glass with Zack, Cloud, and Sephiroth engraved. A new mouse pad, and that's really it. Because I knew if I started
spending.
Yeah, I knew if I started buying like PS1 games and PS2 games, like, it's just a never-ending thing. The only PlayStation game that I purchased, which was important for me to buy for multiple reasons, was I got a copy of Uncharted 2 in Japanese. And obviously, first trip with my son, his name's Nathan Drake, like, that's how it all things. So I'm like, I need to buy that. And besides that, that was really
it. Had to be Uncharted 2.
No, it actually didn't have to be Uncharted 2. It was just the one that I found first. So I was like, Uncharted 3 is technically my favorite, but Uncharted 2 is like the one everyone seems to like more. And it's just the first one I grabbed. I'm like, well, that's the one I'm going to get. So, yeah. Obviously did a lot of temples, a lot of sushi, a lot of ramen. Fell in love with ramen.
Japan has other things other than, you know, PlayStation.
Yeah, my uncle messaged me, who's a gamer as well. I often talk about my uncle and how I kind of learned a lot from him, from the, you know, love of gaming type thing. And even he said, he's like, are you like going to do any of the cultural stuff? And I said, yes. I said, I'm getting a lot of this done in Tokyo because it's like city and hustle and bustle. And then when I was in Osaka and Kyoto, it was a lot of like, you know, temples and family stuff. But my wife was really patient and the stores are super small and Japan is not very child friendly. There's a lot of stairs, not a lot of prams. So I think I, gained about 3 kilos of muscle in my shoulder lifting the pram up the staircase every time we had to go to the train station underground. But yeah, it was an amazing trip, once in a lifetime. Like we hope to go back again, but I think it's still going to be a long time before we get back. So yeah, that's I guess a really condensed version of my last 3 weeks, but it was amazing. I absolutely loved it.
So so now that you've spent a few weeks at Japan and you kind of seen the Nintendo side of it and you see the PlayStation side of it, I do actually have a question for you. And this relates to the third player in the whole triangle of games that we seem to have console wise.
Sega.
Xbox. No, Xbox.
No. Yeah.
What sort of presence did Xbox have? Because I know in the news and all that sort of stuff, apparently that presence has been building. Did you notice anything?
I did notice.
Not there.
So, I'm just trying to find the photo because I actually took a photo of the Xbox section of the store, or one of the stores that I went into. Basically, I was firstly, all right, I'll dial back. I was firstly shocked by how much Nintendo. I knew Nintendo's obviously popular there, but I had no idea how popular Nintendo was over there. I was lucky enough to kind of be there when their Alamo clock got announced and then released. And the line, apparently, I missed out, but I did get to see one, was ridiculous. And this is for an alarm clock.
Yeah, it's literally for a themed alarm clock.
So that was the first thing that kind of really surprised me, was like how big Nintendo was. And then I can't find the photo. And then the second thing was PlayStation was quite big as well, but it was less. There was less love, I think, for it, in the sense that the stores had really big displays, like the equivalent of a JB Hi-Fi would. We'd be lucky if you have like one screen playing a game.
Yeah. These
had rows, right? So when you think about like Metaphor and you think of Stellar Blade and Astrobot, I don't know if you can kind of see it there. Bit. Just rows of like TV setups, displays. Oh man, I should have grabbed one. It's like
it's advertising TVs almost.
Yeah, and they had like the games and like little standees and stuff next. Man, I didn't even think to grab one of those. Kind of set up, and then they have like the big wall of games. So there's a lot of that, but there isn't the deep love for PlayStation anywhere, in the sense that like Nintendo, we were underground walking between a train station and just randomly I'm like, oh, Mario's on the wall. Okay, cool. And then like I keep walking, turn a corner, and the whole length of the walkway was Mario themed, and it was all like different stages, like the underground, underwater, modern, retro Mario, with music playing that matched those sections of the game. So when you went into the ground, it did that, like it changed. Like things like that, where it's just like there's a deep respect and love for the brand in just everyday life. Where PlayStation's a lot more like it's a product. Still very popular, like everywhere in the stores is PlayStation everywhere, but it's not like there's no like Aloy printed on a wall or anything like that, right? Astrobot. So it's almost like
it's almost like it's corporate versus fun.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds.
And that's always Nintendo's stick. But I think in Western society, it's not as played out. Like we still think Nintendo, you still kind of think the cutesy fun of the three, but I don't think in the stores and the way it's represented in Western society isn't, you go to the Nintendo Switch section of a store, it looks like the PlayStation section, except it's red. Where like Nintendo their section will have literally a Mario coming out of a warp pipe at the front, and it's like really built out. So that was cool to see. Xbox, I'll be completely honest, once I went to a used game store that had 13 Xbox games and about 2 rows of PlayStation games, like rows, and like 3 rows of Nintendo stuff. So I think, I think when you look at the numbers, I think they were like selling like 1,000 or 2,000 a quarter. Like it's so small. And a lot of the Xbox stuff I did see wasn't games. It was kind of just like a section with like plaques for Game Pass and a few other things.
So it's more the hardware.
Yeah, it was kind of like the hardware and then like advertising for Game Pass, which is kind of their thing now anyway, and they're moving to digital. But I was actually surprised also to see Sega being so prominent. Like
Okay.
a lot of Sega stuff and a lot of Atlas stuff and a lot of Sonic and just I actually felt like I saw more Sega than I did PlayStation. It was kind of like Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation were kind of close, and then Xbox was much further down on the list. But man, it's just everywhere, right? And it's just anime and cosplay and all these like peripheral things to video games that we like is just so commonplace. Like it was just incredible.
Well, that's one of the things that, when you look at things like the console wars, the real main one that really put consoles on the map, a lot of people would argue, is the Nintendo versus Sega
Oh, 100%.
argument. And so it doesn't surprise me that Sega still has an active presence in Japan, considering that it was seen as the one-two punch with Nintendo, and it was only later on did PlayStation kind of turn up in a sense, and Xbox is still trying to get a footing on the beachhead.
Mm.
So I'm not surprised by that, but you always kind of get that because, for like full disclosure, I've never been to Japan. My parents did and had the audacity to not get me a ticket, but that's all right. They're just spending my inheritance. It's fine. Um,
Totally.
and even they were talking about how the gamification of everything over there, and especially with like Nintendo being the fun brand, where it was the culture of Japan. So like when you think about say Melbourne, for example, you're thinking about the coffee, you're thinking about the graffiti, maybe the sports,
And the
maybe the
food.
live music, the food, like that. You're thinking that sort of stuff. Like that's the same like breadth that you'd think when you're thinking Japan. You're thinking the sushi. You're thinking
The
like
Seven
maybe the
Elevens
ramen,
and
the seven, yeah, whatever. But you're also like the vending machines and stuff. But then you're thinking Nintendo.
yeah, it's like there's no comparing Australia or Melbourne to Japan, but it's like Japan is Japan. The culture of Japan hasn't changed. It's kind of grown and shaped differently. And it's kind of reflected in the actual location as well, right? You would go from a city block, like the Nintendo Kyoto store, in the main kind of think like Collins Street type thing, but much bigger. And then you would turn right and there'd be a temple. And from that point forward, it was all temple stuff, right? So that's kind of Japan's culture in a nutshell. It's like as it's changed and grown, it hasn't gotten rid of anything. It's just added on top of it and kept it. So like the anime, then video games, then DVDs, movies, all those things get built on top of it, and then it just stays there. Where we're very quick to like move on to the next thing, right? Like even take our stores for example, right? JB Hi-Fi or whatever is stopping to sell Blu-rays, or EB Games now becoming more of a merchandise store, not so much a video game store. Like we're quick to just like this isn't working, we move on. Where I saw banners for DVDs over there still, right? Like neon DVD signs. Like it was so cool to see. So yeah, it's just like that's the culture, and I think because to Australia's credit, we're very multicultural, and that is what makes Australia in the sense that you can walk down a street and get Italian food, Thai food, Greek food, where Japan is like 85% Japanese food, and then it's like you might find an Italian restaurant. I saw a kebab place, one kebab place, like that's not their it's still very Japanese, which is good in the sense that like it's kind of nice to go to a place that has that sense of history, culture, and even though it looks different to what it looked like 10 years ago, 50 years, 100 years ago, like the remnants of those things are still there. Where with us, we wouldn't have a sign out in the city that had DVD written on it. We wouldn't even have one that had Blu-ray written on it today, right? Like you'd have Netflix. Like you wouldn't even have that displayed, where they would proudly still have DVDs like sold here, stuff like that. So yeah, it was an amazing trip, and I hope to get back there one day because it was just yeah, it's just
You know,
awesome.
from what you're saying, it sounds like Japan understands preservation.
Oh, 1000%, 1000%.
And speaking of, you're talking about Blu-rays and DVDs. EB Games is going to be selling them soon.
I did see that. I did see.
Funny that you're mentioning that. Just by the way.
It's. I mean, whatever. Like, I don't know. I think the only way we're going to keep long-term video games, physical video games going, right, in terms of not going as in like them being made, but them being sold, is going to be like smaller, not mum and pop stores, but just like stores that it's kind of a niche thing. There's just going to be less of them. Like EB Games are in nearly every major shopping
Boutique.
center. Yeah, which is what EB stands for. Doesn't it stand for
Electronics boutique.
Yeah, like, but an actual boutique, kind of like a Game Traders, right? Where it's like smaller scale. But yeah, I mean, what else can I say? It's an amazing place. I didn't expect to come back with a tan. Like, we all came back with a tan. And like, everyone's like, where did you go? You're like, we were in Europe. And I'm like, man, it was hot. Man.
How much did it rain?
It rained one day in each place, basically. So 3 days in the whole.
In 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks, yeah.
That's not bad. It's one day in each place.
Yeah, and it was always the day we got to the next place. Like, literally, like, the get up in the morning, it'd be raining, and then we'd be like bullet train, over to the next spot. And their
transport's pretty good, yeah.
Transport's ridiculous. Like, so their equivalent to like our Mikey is like everything. Like, I paid for lunch on my Mikey. Well, it's called a Suka card, but it's basically you top it up like you would a Mikey, but then you can use it as a debit card as well.
It just sounds like it's a debit card.
Yeah, it's just a debit card that you can use for everything. But their trains are like, it took us a day to get used to we got lost and went backwards, and we were using Apple Maps, which it's hard to explain, but basically, like, you think of like a train station here, and you're like, all right, here's the train stations going one way and then the other, easy. Japan's like, okay, do that, but you're underground, and these train stations can span the width and length of a city block, and there's also multiple different lines built on top of it in all different directions. So it's not so much important that you get to the right train station. It's not that I need to go to Flinders and lane and platform 6. It's like, you need to get to Flinders, but you need to go from Flinders entrance gate 6, kind of like an airport. So that means you need to go from this street's entrance. Because if you go to the same station but enter from another street, you're not going to be able to get to the platform that you need to, or the line that you need to. So it's like, it just took us a moment to be like, okay, it's not like up and down, left and right. It's like, I need to go to this station. I need to enter from a certain point, and then obviously get there. And then there's multiple, you can travel between train stations, some train stations, by walking completely underground. So it's like a shopping center underground. And I actually asked, we had a private tour, and I actually asked about
private tour
their trains, and it was so basically after World War II, there was that much kind of hustle and bustle. Japan was growing quickly. They built the underground subway system as like...
Is this also after the bombs?
After the bombs, yeah. A way to kind of transport underground, get away from the heat, and then kind of relieve the amount of like foot traffic up top. So that was like crazy. I'm like, holy shit, I just walked a whole city block underground and got to a different train station.
You've literally gone from like platform 1 at Flinders to
Southern Cross. Central. Yeah, to Melbourne Central, completely underground. Yeah.
Which that's wild when you think of it, especially when you're talking about how you've got the Mario murals on the side, and that was all just music and
restaurants under there. That was the other thing to try to get used to, like restaurants underground, upground. Like the amount of times I'm like, the map's saying I'm here and there's nothing here, and I'm like, oh, we need to go underground, like, or we need to go up, or and you know, Melbourne culture is like, you can tell a good restaurant by how big and busy it is, where Japan's like, it's the opposite. It's like the small hidden places are the ones that are the best, where you see a lot of the locals kind of just chilling in there. So yeah, I highly recommend if you can get there. You know, I went to the Square Enix Cafe. I kind of like ticked off, you know, I said, you know, I think I even told you, like, I really ticked off a lot of my bucket list stuff. Akihabara, like I said, PlayStation headquarters, the Nintendo stuff. Just to be there, like, it was enough. Like, I traveled 40 minutes to get to the PlayStation's head office, and we were there for like 10 minutes. And Naomi's like, you happy with, you know, you just took a photo and went in. I'm like, that's enough for me. And then at the exact same time, Shuhei is in Melbourne
Yep.
for, I think, PAX and some other thing
Yeah.
as well. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, son of a, like, I came all this way.
Come all this way for have coffee, and you've decided to
Come to
come and
Melbourne.
meet me.
Yeah, like literally 5 minutes from my work. So, yeah. Anyway, that's probably enough about my my
All
treat.
right. Well, that's Japan then.
That's Japan. Until next time. All right. I forgot I was hosting. Let's move on. So what we're gonna
You're
do?
just like reminiscing in Japan. You're just like, my work here is done.
My
I've
work's
had
here
my
done.
chat. Yeah.
I'm gonna go and leave again. So a lot of it's kind of been a slow, quiet period for news, which is nearly somewhat expected as we get closer to December and we've got Game Awards coming up, and that's when things start ramping up again. In saying that, Xbox held their third-party showcase. Some really cool games have come out, and that's what we're going to kind of spend some time talking about. I know I've been kind of playing some of the new releases. Sean, you've kind of been dipping back into your backlog. So I've done enough talking. Maybe we start with you and what you've kind of been playing, not only recently, but over the last 3 weeks. If there's been anything that's been, obviously you were away for camping as well, but if there was anything kind of exciting or anything that you really want to talk about.
Well, so there's a couple of games that I have played over the last couple of weeks, and it's actually getting back into some of the Pokemon games. So like your Pokemon Violet, even Pokemon Sun on the 3DS and that sort of stuff. I've had a couple of friends who have been trying to play them, and even when you get to PAX, they had like the whole trading area, so you can trade between like some of the different versions to kind of fill Pokedexes. So
How was PAX,
I've
by the way?
uh, I really enjoy PAX. I know that there were a few people that I spoke to that thought PAX was a little bit boring, but I guess like it really depends on what you want to get out of it.
Mm.
If you're going in to get like freebies and stuff, most of the time you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed. But I went in with an open mind to see, okay, well, what sort of panels are there going to be? What sort of like indie games are there going to be? What's on the tabletop? And kind of like go from there. So like I enjoyed myself for the days that I went. The one day I did end up cosplaying. I went as one of my LARPing characters, so I got dressed up in my whole $1,000 outfit, all handmade and all that sort of stuff. And I went with a mate who literally like for 1 hour that morning built a gonk outfit,
What?
and this is a gonk droid from Star Wars.
Ah, okay.
GONK. So basically, if you picture this, it's like two grey tubs from Bunnings on top of each other with legs sticking out underneath, and all it says is gonk. And Josh is currently looking up the picture, and I know Josh is one of the biggest Star Wars fans we know, but even some characters have to slip his mind.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right. Oh, wow. So it's literally like, it looks like a trash can with legs.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So we put that together in an hour beforehand. Went in. So his costume cost under $100, and he was getting very hot in there. But at least we could like store everything because
Yeah.
he's literally wearing storage containers. And he got so many photos, and everyone was loving it. He got the People's Choice Award at one of the cosplay
Wild.
awards, and all that. Everyone's taking photos of him, and I'm like playing the role of the salty cosplay, where it's like he only spent $100, I spent $1,000, and he's getting all the photos. But no, it was very funny doing that. If you haven't seen the photos, I'm sure they're on Instagram and all that sort of stuff. So make sure you check it out. But the one thing that I got out of PAX the most was probably some of the panels. So like it's kind of one of those opportunities where we see like your Oz Comic Con and that sort of stuff, whether it's related to TV shows, film, video games, where you got the panel and you talk to people and you kind of hear the voice actors and what they do and like some other sort of topics. So my favorite panel that I went to was one where they had one of the game designers for Elder Scrolls Online.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Which is celebrating its 10th year anniversary this year. And so they had them and a couple of content creators, and they literally held a panel for 45 minutes talking about the creation of the music of Elder Scrolls Online.
That's
and
cool.
so they had like a pianist who would play some of the songs. So they'll be like, "Yep, this is the song that you hear at this point or in this location," and you'll hear that it's about this or whatever, and then they'll go and play it, and they'll say, "Yeah, I really like how they changed like the tone from like at this point, and it kind of builds up to this or whatever it is. And then they ask the game designer, it's like, so what's the go? And this game, the game designer, he worked closely with sound, and he worked with the guy who does the sound engineering for Elder Scrolls Online. He's like a big black metal, death metal fan, which is always funny when these sorts of people get involved in these like orchestral kind of soundtracks. And so they would go and talk about kind of like where the inspiration was, or like, hey, this is the word, create like a piece about this word, and then they go off and do it. And so like that, it was only like 45 minutes, but as a panel like that like it's something I really enjoyed, because I do listen to that sort of music
awesome.
In some instances, rather than the current latest Taylor Swift song.
Taylor Swift, yeah.
So I got a lot out of PAX.
Much video gamey stuff there, like new things or.
Yeah, there is like Sega had their part with Sonic and a couple of others. You had your Star Wars there. You had your Monster Hunter was there. Final Fantasy 14 was there. They had a massive one. So you had like a line for new players and a line for experienced players. So if you're a new player, you can go and like play for a little bit. If you're an experienced player, you can sign up and do raids. So you can log in as your character and actually compete in raids with like other people, like at PAX. On these computer setups. So in terms of like Nintendo and all that sort of stuff, I didn't really see a presence. There was no like big PlayStation area. There was no big Xbox area. They've had them before.
I was gonna say Xbox has had it before. I think the one I went to was when the Xbox One was on display.
Yeah, well, was that the one I got you in on?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
So that was Xbox, and literally across the road or something like that on the diagonal was like Nintendo. And so Xbox and Nintendo had their big areas. PlayStation was like, we don't need to. And it kind of felt like none of them needed to. We didn't have a new Switch.
There was nothing to really.
So exactly. Like the only game that's really come out of major note from Nintendo, like first party recently, would probably be the Mario Party Jamboree, which came out last week.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they probably didn't need a stall at PAX, but I think next year they probably will.
Yeah.
Just judging on kind of market trends. But look, at the end of the day, I enjoyed my time. I like walking around and
you just gotta absorb it, right?
Yeah, like the indie games that are available. I think being able to not only hands-on but talk to the developers, I think that's something that you don't get very often. And we talk about these big major AAA titles all the time, but they have I'm not going to say forced, but it's very scripted interviews, and you know that they're saying the party line and that sort of stuff.
They're media trained.
They're media trained. Whereas, you're talking to an independent team of 3 people and they've been working on this game for 4 years, and then they just want to talk to you about it. It's like, oh yeah, we know this bug, but we think it's fantastic. Like, we're going to keep it in for a little bit, but we'll patch it later. Like, having that kind of candid conversation, I think that's something that's really missed. And so PAX kind of delivers on that. You don't really get that anywhere else in Australia.
No, we don't have anything like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed my PAX. Like a lot of people, as I said, a lot of people did say it was boring for them, but I don't know what you'd be wanting to get out of it other than seeing kind of what's in the sphere. Like if you're going there to spend money, you'll spend money.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It's just all expectations. Like I felt that when I went, because I was kind of wanting like the equivalent of like an E3, which we were never going to get here, right? And speaking of, I was so annoyed when I found out. Like, I didn't even think when we booked the trip, TGS is in October. We just missed TGS, and I don't even know if I would have got in, but I might have been able to get a public pass, so that would have been awesome. And you mentioned Final Fantasy before, and it kind of awoken something in me. And Monster Hunter. The other 2 things that were really big in Japan, Monster Hunter and Dragon Quest. Massive. Like, I wouldn't have even... Monster Hunter is huge. Like, Monster Hunter has always been big, and World is like Capcom's best-selling game, and that surprised a lot of people. And a lot of that was driven from Japan, but Dragon Quest was just everywhere. Like, I'm talking about like in the cafeteria at a temple, they had the slime from Dragon Quest on the wall or something like that. It was just everywhere. But in terms of like, since I've gotten back, I think prior to me going, I had finished Black Myth Wukong. We spoke about that. We had Astrobot. I have finished Astrobot. I haven't been able to go back and platinum it. I'm there. I've collected all the bots. I just need to do that final shapes thing.
Good luck.
Yeah, I've spoke to my uncle. He said he's like, I broke a controller. I'm like, oh great, this is gonna be one of those.
I think I recorded me completing it. I think I've got a footage somewhere.
So I want to get back to that. They've obviously added in the time levels as well, and they've added some new bots and things like that. But then I picked up Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, which I never actually played the first one, but this was kind of getting some positive reviews and being spoken about a bit, and kind of reminded me of Evil West in terms of like a modern kind of PS3 feeling. Don't get offended, people. PS3. Remember, there was that one comment. It's like, "How dare you?"
Oh yeah, one comment.
Yeah, offend PS3.
Because you hold a grudge, man.
Oh yeah. Do you know me? Of course I do. Space Marine 2 was like kind of in that similar vein where it kind of felt like a modern retro-ish PS3 type game, and that was fun. I never got through it all. Like I just ran out of time, and I kind of hope I'd go back and finish it because I hate not finishing games. But that was honestly a fun. Like that's something if you could pick up for like $30, $20, it was worth its weight. Kind of plays like it's kind of like a Gears of War, really, except without the cover system. It's like there's no cover system, but you're talking about like big chunky dudes with like chainsaw sword, which is now that you think about it, like obviously Warhammer's been around for a long time. Like there's obviously inspiration taken from that for Gears, right? In terms of like the chainsaw weapon, the big armors and things like that. But the whole, I kind of went in a bit of a rabbit hole, down a rabbit hole, leading up to playing that game with like a lot of lore videos around Warhammer. And I was like, whoa, man, like I am stepping away from this before not that I'd ever get into the miniatures and things like that, because I'm just well beyond that. But it was just like, man, like
you don't understand. You don't understand, Josh. Like you think that your slight obsession with Final Fantasy over the last couple of years, you think that diving into those sorts of rabbit holes, and like we joke about like Kingdom Hearts lore and that sort of stuff, but the moment you get into Warhammer, like that's it. It's Warhammer or bust.
Yeah, it was
like, everything.
And I apologize if you're watching and you keep hearing or seeing me mute. My allergies have just all of a sudden, or like 20 minutes before we went live, are like, all right, now you got hay fever really bad. Yeah, so that was like, oh, holy crap, this is quite deep. And yeah, the game's fun. Like I said, if you can pick it up, I think it's like a solid 7.5, like good to great type experience.
No, you're not giving it a 7 as well.
Oh, who else?
Have you? Okay, so have you seen the trend of IGN giving every game a 7 right now?
Was that because Dragon Ball Z got?
Dragon Ball Z got a 7. I'm pretty sure Space Marine 2 got a 7. Concord got a 7. Star Wars Outlaws got a 7. Every single game on IGN right now is getting a 7.
I think it's mainly because, like, even like if you think about this show, like everything we play is like great or amazing. It's a sense that we're like often not buying shitty games, and I think they're not reviewing bad games, right? Like it's always like it's from good up, and it's like where does it sit on that scale? Unless we're playing like Golem or something like that.
Actually, I was thinking about buying Golem. It was like $9 the other day. I was really considering picking it up just to play it, review it, and give it like a 3.
But yeah, so we can use the full scale. But yeah, I think it is somewhere between good and great. Like, I mean, there's not much more I would have asked from it. Like, it's a fun gameplay loop. Like, it was very like. Level design's nothing crazy in terms of like, all right, activate these 3 things, defend this point, like very basic kind of level design and gameplay loop that we've seen in a lot of games. But I think the thing I'd come away from it remembering is like the guys who made it, Saber Interactive, are the guys who did the World War Z game, right? And they had a tech, I think they called it the Horde tech, which is like where in World War Z, they would have like the zombies climbing on top of each other to build a ladder to kind of get over things. And this game has that with the, forget what the enemies are called, but they're basically like Alien from Aliens, right? They're like little aliens. So like that was cool, right? In the sense of like, oh, they're coming and you actually see the horde of enemies from a distance making their way towards you. And it's not like they're just set pieces. You could shoot them from where you were and you actually see them die, and like that's one less that's coming at you. And the game's not all about like just kill everything. It's more about survive. And it's like ultimately you won't be able to kill everything, but you just need to get to point A to B or do your objective and survive and kill as many as you can. And it's a great like kind of again, very Evil West in the sense that it's like not just a shooter. There's like melee combat that plays a really big part of it. And it's a fun kind of, I think it was just a fun experience. And it's like, if you're a fan of like Gears of War and like that style of like gameplay and grit and gore, I definitely think to pick it up. And yeah, it seems like most people really enjoyed it. So yeah, I don't know if you had any questions about it specifically, but that was kind of what I finished up right before I went to Japan.
No, not really. I know a couple of friends who are playing it and they really enjoy it. But every time I seem to pick up a Warhammer game because my friends say, "Oh, this is really cool." It's like we'll play co-op for a few sessions, and then I'll miss like maybe 1 or 2 sessions, and then I'll play with them again, and they're like max level.
Oh, well, if you ever do pick it up, we can do it because I'll happily.
I got to pick it up on PlayStation then, don't I?
Of course you do. Happily, we'll start it again and go through it with you, especially as we get into like December and it gets really quiet. But yeah, so got back. I'm going to say like at that point it'll be super cheap, so probably a good point to pick it up.
Yeah, Christmas.
Got back, and whilst I was away, there was 2 releases that I was literally the day I got back from Japan after a 10-hour flight was like, I need to go pick up my orders from EB Games. So I went and picked up, and Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero and Metaphor ReFantazio both came out whilst I was away. Dragon Ball Z I think launched first. Yes, yep. If I remember correctly. So we'll start there. So I picked up those 2 games. Now, yeah, I'll start with Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero. I was cautiously optimistic when this game was announced. It's been a hell of a long time since the past Budokai Tenkaichi games. So my history of Dragon Ball Z was obviously, I'm 30 now, so I was prime Dragon Ball Z time as a kid. So basically watched from Z onwards up until the end of the Buu saga. Saw a little bit of GT. Haven't seen much of Super, but I kind of am in the mood. I've seen episode 1 of the new Daima, I think it's Daimo series on Netflix, which is like the Toriyama's last one. So I was it's kind of got me back into a Dragon Ball Z mode, and I kind of lived through those games in terms of like the story of Dragon Ball Z, in the sense that on TV at the time, I remember it was like the Frieza saga, but obviously Dragon Ball Z had ended. It's just Australia was so far behind in terms of like when the show was on. So my experiences for watching the Saiyan saga, which I missed, I started at the Frieza saga, so I missed the Saiyan saga, and then
the Android saga.
I did watch Frieza, Android, Cell, and Buu, but it was like I had played the games before I got to that point. Once the TV show caught up with the rest of the world. But I never watched the Saiyan saga. I completely skipped that, and back then there was no internet, right? Like it was like really hard to go back and find. So I really lived, like, I would say 60% of like my Dragon Ball Z memory was the games. And it was like, I played all of them. I played Budokai 1, 2, and 3, Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3, like loved them. Tenkaichi 3 is the one everyone talks about because it's got like the really big roster. But I think I enjoyed Budokai Tenkaichi 2 the most, which had like, it was a smaller roster, but it like really in detail told the story of like Saiyan Saga up to the end of Buu, like every fight, like even just like the smaller like Yamcha Tien fight that might have happened in an episode, like that had a battle, and it was like a really detailed telling of the Dragon Ball Z story. Anyway, those games were a dime a dozen. We were getting them quite often, but then they disappeared from this face of the earth, and then we got into the PS3 generation. We got some like random, it was like Burst Limit, I think it was, or Raging Blast. Maybe both of them were games, right? Definitely Burst Limit. I remember that one. I think Raging Blast was another one. And then there was Ultimate Tenkaichi, which wasn't very good. So we kind of got like these middling Dragon Ball Z games, right? Kakarot came out, which is more of an RPG, which I actually think I would have enjoyed, but apparently the cutscenes are like chef's kiss. But for some reason, I was over Dragon Ball Z. I was like, I haven't touched anything from Dragon Ball Z in such a long time. I'm not going back now. Then Fighters came out, and I purchased and played Fighters. And that was like a more hardcore, obviously, Arc System Works fighting game. And then this got announced, and I'm like, obviously they spoke about like, you know, the name, and Sparking is the name that Tenkaichi is in Japan. It's called Sparking, or Sparking. I think it's called Sparking. That was what those games were called. So this was kind of like just aligning the two, very similar to like what's the other game series that Yakuza, right? And they had Like a Dragon, where it's in the States it was Yakuza, but in Japan it was Like a Dragon. So now it's Like a Dragon, and synergize there. So yeah, this game got announced. It was like the spiritual successor, and I'm like, yeah, all right. And then I guess it was up until launch where the reviews came out, and it's like I heard a lot of people talking about like this is like return to form. It kind of feels like what the old games felt like back then, but newer. The combat systems actually got a level of depth, but not too much. Like it's still extremely unbalanced, and it's still like, you know, the Goku characters and the Vegeta characters, and the fusions of the two are like the strongest characters. Like it's clear that there's
what
like,
about Yajirobe and Chaozu? You've
yeah,
forgotten them.
yeah, except for like just two random characters that just have like these insane powers. But yeah, I was hearing the positive reviews. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick this up. And then so I've been back since Saturday. It's now Wednesday, and I've put in 6 hours in both this and Metaphor, which is, for me, that's a lot of time. Like 12 hours in 4 days is a long time for father Josh. And yeah, I got to say, this game's really fun. Like it's definitely pandering to the Dragon Ball Z audience. Like, you know, the storytelling approach is a lot more sporadic, and it kind of gives you, because it covers from Dragon Ball Z all the way through and Super, like it has to skip a lot of things. So it's definitely, you basically play the campaigns, and there's like a Goku campaign, Piccolo, Vegeta, Goku Black, Frieza, and you play all the battles that they were involved with, and you get kind of snapshots of it. So what that means is like Goku, like the Saiyan saga goes really quick, because it's really just the fight with Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta. And you're like, oh, that was really quick. Where in the old games, it was like, you know...
you've got Goku and Raditz, and then you've got Raditz and Piccolo, and then you've got Raditz against Goku and Piccolo.
Yeah, then Gohan comes in, and then like even with the Saiyan saga, you got everyone trying to fight Nappa, and Nappa getting, you know, blown up by Chaozu, and then all those, right, you got the Yamcha versus, you got Tien versus him, like, where this is just Goku beats him, and then he versus Vegeta. But then when you do the Vegeta storyline, you see it from his angle, right? So then you relive the battles that he fought, which is Goku, but there's others as well. So you kind of like, you go back and you kind of fill in the gaps with all the different characters, right? And like I said,
you've forgotten one key part about those campaigns.
So
you're doing you're doing the campaigns, and then there's the what if part. So for example, you might finish a fight, but you might finish it quicker than usual, and so that like then a particular time, that unlocks another path where, like, for example, Gohan might get Super Saiyan a hell of a lot quicker than he would in the regular timeline. And so then it branches off as to, okay, so what happens then?
Yeah.
If Gohan gets it, and so be it. And that's kind of where the story of the whole Dragon Ball Sparking Zero comes into it, because as much as it is kind of doing the whole pandering and building towards the series and going from start to finish, in a sense, for Dragon Ball Z and then GT and Super, but now you've got all these other possibilities, and it branches out so much more.
Oh yeah, there was like, you know, I've counted a few of them. I won't spoil a lot of them, but there's like one where it's like, what if Vegeta went Super Saiyan 2 instead of Gohan in the Cell fight, right? So instead of Goku Gohan, it's like Vegeta and Trunks gets killed, and then that's what triggers Vegeta to go Super Saiyan 2, is, you know, similar to how Gohan gets triggered. So like, there's that, and that was in the old games as well. They had their what if scenarios, but this is like a lot more expanded. Obviously the roster's huge, like 100 plus characters, you know, there's like 10 versions of Goku, 10 versions of Vegeta, but that's fine. But I think what I've really enjoyed the most is the fact that the combat system has, like, as much as it's unbalanced and not perfect, there's like the right amount of like pick up and play and look cool and feel overpowered, but there is a level of complexity that if you do spend the time in training, you can really, like, for instance, there's blocking, there's perfect blocking, there's like vanishes, there's dodges, there's reflexes where you kind of like hit back. There's like 4 or 5 different ways to block or counter a move. And like there's really strict timing with those. So like advanced players will utilize that. Where you know if you go into a ranked match, like I think out of the 6 hours, I've spent maybe 3 hours of that in the Goku campaign, some of it in training, and then 2 or 3 hours online. Not in ranked, just like one-on-one battles. And like I'm probably winning 60 or 70% of these at this point, or maybe even like 60 to 50% of these. Like I feel like I'm not just losing. But like when you play in that level, you notice like people are utilizing a lot of the tactics and like the dodging and they're not just coming at you and like trying to shoot a Kamehameha from across the level, right? They like get you in a combo where you can't get out of it and then do it. They're countering, they're blocking. So there's like that right level of complexity. The speed of the battles too, like it's like the show where you're literally like darting around the map, fighting. So like, yeah, again, if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, definitely think to pick this up. And it's kind of like awakened something in me in the sense where I'm like, you know what, I actually do want to go back and just casually watch Dragon Ball Z again and go through and, you know, I'll probably want to go back and watch Z and then go into Super, and just casually.
Skip GT.
Yeah, I never liked GT. Like I watched GT when it was out, and I'm like, the tone just doesn't feel right. The character design, some of them are pretty cool, but it just didn't click with me. So
Akira Toriyama didn't like it so much that he came back and
remade it, right? Like Damon's the same thing. Goku gets shrunk again, like it's like GT again, but done his way. So yeah, like I said, 6 hours in, still have heaps to go. But this is something I'm like interchanging and just playing casually, and I'll probably continue to play towards the end of the year. But yeah, that's been Dragon Ball Z. Again, do you have any?
No, I've seen a lot of clips about Sparking Zero online, and I am interested in actually picking this one up before Christmas time, because I'm motivated to because I've been watching a little bit of Dragon Ball here and there over the last, I don't know, couple of months anyway, leading up to the game release. So I do want to kind of get in and play another Dragon Ball Z game. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to picking it up.
Yeah, it's kind of like an evergreen game. It's kind of like Smash Brothers, right? In the sense where it's like something that you can just pick up and play and have friends over and they can play without really a lot of time needing to be spent practicing. Like it's not like when you pick up Street Fighter and you're like, there's just so much going on because it's like open space and everyone can shoot and fly and it's just kind of like get that understanding of the gameplay controls, and then it's really not too hard to do. Like the super moves are R2 and the face buttons, square, triangle, circle for your super. So it's not like, you know, down, forward, this, and then up, down, left, right. Like it's not like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. So I do think it's kind of like a Smash Brothers type game. I'm the same. Like if I have my brother over or one of my mates is a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, when he comes over, it's like I would play that just like I would pick up a Smash Brothers and say, hey, let's play around type thing. So yeah, I think you'd enjoy it if you did pick it up. The next game that I've been playing, and again, I've only spent equally the amount of time with Dragon Ball Z as I did with this game, is Metaphor ReFantazio. So I'm about 6 hours in, and this is the one. This is the Atlas game. I've tried Persona 3 Reload. I probably did about 10, 15, 20 hours maybe in that. I haven't done 4 Golden. So my experience with Persona is this. I picked up 5 when Royal came out on the recommendation of friend of the show, Vinny. And I remember when I was at his place watching him play it and be like, wait, you've spent what? It was like 120 hours and he was on the last fight. And I'm like, he showed me the save. I'm like, Jesus, man, this game's just ridiculous. And he was singing its praises. So I picked it up, right? With no experience of Persona, Atlas, or anything like that. And I'm like, I think I didn't even make it through the first hour. I was like, nope, this isn't for me. It's too anime, man. Like, there's just too much going on. Time's passed. Everyone talks about Persona 5. Everyone loves Persona. I hear about it being spoken about with, like, you know, rave reviews and things like that. Then 3 Reload gets announced, and I hear that, like, it's the shorter. Persona 3 was, like, 20. No, it wasn't 20. 40 to 60 hours, where most of the other ones are, like, 80 to 100 hours. So it's, like, the shortest Persona. It's the newest one. Everyone was talking about it. I picked it up at launch. I'm like, all right, I'll try this. And I got much further. Like I got, like I said, 10, 15 hours, 20 hours, like somewhere around there, in there. Probably closer to 10 to 15, to be honest. And it just, I like the turn-based combat. Like everything that people rave about, I get. The sound design, the UI, the turn-based combat, really cool, loved it. I just couldn't jive with the high school setup, like the moments when I wasn't in a dungeon. Like I'm like, I don't want to spend hours in a classroom, like, listen to this lecture and you get more intelligence, or talk to this person about, like, how he wants to be the best, fastest runner in the world, and go to the sporting field and spend some time to increase it. Like, it just, that, the high school setup and the things you were doing outside of the dungeons just didn't appeal to me. And I'm like, I'm not connecting with any of these characters. Like, it's just somewhat like typical anime. There's like, your best bro who's kind of like not the smartest, sharpest tool in the shed, but he's got a really good heart. And then there was the girl, and like that type of stuff. I'm like, all right, I'm enjoying the combat and the strategy that's there, but that's not 90% of the game, and it's not even 60% of the game. Like, it's like half of the game. The other half is all the social links and things like that. And I was just like, this isn't connecting. I'm like, oh, the idea of like having a persona and like transforming into this thing is such a cool concept. Like, I love summons and things like that. And then I'm like, the persona designs weren't really doing much for me either. Like, some of them, where it's like, some of them look really cool, and then some of them I'm like an ice cream cone or a pumpkin or a little fairy. I'm like, just isn't clicking with me. So when Metaphor got announced, I'm like, I don't want to do this again, in the sense of like, I spend $100 buying a game and like trying another Atlas game that doesn't seem to click. But I'm happy to say, like, I'm really enjoying my time with Metaphor. And I think what's doing wonders for me is like the setting, the tone. And so it's a fantasy JRPG. It's more darker in theme. Like, you're not in a classroom. Like, again, you're in a fantasy world. The king's been killed, and you're on a quest to do something. And then there's like intrigue and deception, and there's like all the complexities that does happen in Persona games, but done in a more mature way. And I've heard other people talk about the difference between this and Persona. Like, there is key differences, but you still have like the social links. You're still doing side quests. But what the game doesn't do, that the Persona games I found did very early on, apparently they do open up, but I'm not waiting 30 hours to get to that point, is like the start 5-10 hours is like considered the prologue. And it's like, there's a lot of like, okay, go to the classroom. Okay, it's nighttime. You need to go to bed. Go to bed. Cutscene. Wake up. All right, now you're back in the classroom. Do this. Now you need to go to bed. Like, it's the game telling you, you need to do this. You need to go to bed. You need to do this. Where this game like opens up pretty quickly, and you're in a dungeon pretty quickly, and you're out exploring, and then hooks you with the story, and then starts introducing like, okay, now you've got a week before the next big story mission. How do you want to spend it? And then do all those social link things that are in Persona. So the approach to not level design, but gameplay and timing and pacing is done in a way that I find a lot more appealing. And then on top of that, because of the setting, everything looks much more appealing to me. Like the archetypes, which are the personas, I haven't encountered one that looks like a ice cream cone, right? These are all like big hulking armored knights, or mages with like these big cloaks, like really fantasy stuff that is a lot more appealing to me. So yeah, 5-6 hours in, obviously I'm hearing that it's going to take me at least 80 hours to play, but so far I'm much more hooked than I've ever been with any of the other Atlas games.
You see, I actually don't know anything about this game besides the fact that everyone really likes it. And I never played a Persona game. I don't think I've even owned one. It's been one of those ones where it's just been off the periphery, never really noticed it. So, good to hear that you're enjoying it. I'm not sure if I'll be jumping into it. I feel like I've got way too much on my plate.
Oh, there's so much going on. And like Dragon Age is out in a week, and I'm like somewhat interested in playing that too. I'm like, well, That's gonna have to wait because I can't play Dragon Ball Z Metaphor. Great, because it's like Metaphor is like, you know, you got your combat, but it's turn based, a bit more slower, a bit more story driven, and then I get my like Dragon Ball Z fix,
Gotta go fast.
hit some dudes, shoot some fireballs, and then dart back. But yeah, when Dragon Age comes out, even if it comes out, it's a 9.5. I'm like, well, you're a December because I can't be doing two RPGs at the same time.
I'm pretty happy that Assassin's Creed Shadows got moved back to next year.
Yeah, me too. There's so much. There's so much to play, and even in December when it gets quiet, like I kind of want to pick up the Legacy of Kain remaster because I never played those games, and those games are apparently quite good back from PS1.
Don't forget Indiana Jones.
That's Amy Hennig's game as well. Like she obviously wrote Uncharted afterwards, and Indiana Jones. Like for me, that's fine. I'll wait until next year and get on PlayStation, but like that's coming out too for people that are on Xbox and PC. Like there is a lot still coming out. And like I said, Dragon Age, like there is a lot. So I'm kind of happy. I'm like, this will get me through into November easily and probably closer to the end of the month. Probably even into December. Then I can kind of pick up Dragon Age if it reviews well, and I'm new to the series, so if it seems like it's a good starting point. If the reviews well, I'll probably pick that up in mid-December and play that into January. But there is a lot, you know. So yeah, that's been it. Like I think I'll be talking about these two games for probably the next month because that's going to be me.
Meanwhile, I've been trying to be nice and relaxed and chill, and I've been playing some Disney Dreamlight Valley.
I mean, some would argue more important and more popular games than what I'm playing. So.
Whoever those three people are, I've never heard of them. But no, actually, do you know anything about Disney Dreamlight Valley?
Is this like the animated looking? Remember when it was announced? I'm like, is this Kingdom Hearts? It's not PC mobile kind of looking game.
No. Yes. It's made by Gameloft, who did like the mobile games for a while. So basically, think of it as Animal Crossing. But instead of trying to get other villagers into your village, you're trying to get Disney characters back to Disneyland.
Gotcha. Sorry, it was
and then
just
you do
hay fever, man.
That's all right. And then like you can level them up and do missions for them, and there's like other things you can do. And like the main story is that you're trying to get rid of the forgotten. So like Disney characters are forgetting where they are and who they are, and it's like, oh, you need to bring back the memories of these Disney characters, and it's like. The whole story is just a bit of a tosh, but like in terms of gameplay, it's really super simple. In terms of like digging holes and planting crops, or going fishing, or like collecting like trees and wooden flowers off the ground, and getting rid of thorns and that sort of stuff.
Engaging.
It's very engaging. Well, I've been able to see Disney Dreamlight Valley has been able to get me through October because I can watch horror films on the other TV.
Gotcha.
So I've been getting through my Spooktober catalog of films to watch, which at the moment I think is on about 68 films. I've watched a few of them.
Right.
There's a couple of series somewhere, but like I'm starting to go through these horror films, and in order to do that, I need to play Disney Dreamlight Valley, or like I think the other one that I was going to go back to was Power Wash Simulator or something like that.
Something relaxing.
Just something relaxing that I can just look at if I need to focus on. When anything's touching character's eye, I can just move across and be like, yeah, I might go after that orange fishing spot next to Ursula, and then I'll see what her high value reward items that I have to give to her are today, like that sort of stuff. Very, 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 very nice, very subtle, very demure.
No, it's good. I mean, it's not like you're playing Silent Hill 2, which sounds like it would completely stress you out, and I wouldn't even touch it because it's like way too scary for me.
No, I actually I saw that Scorn was coming off Game Pass, and I have had that game installed on my Xbox since it arrived on Game Pass, and I have not opened the game. And now that it's leaving Game Pass, I'm like, yeah, I think it's for the best.
I think it's for the best. Yeah, just give it a complete miss.
Just I'll watch a speed run later and just feel better about
with
myself.
no volume on.
No
Oh man,
volume, but just like, and I'll get through it in like half an hour.
well, that
And
wasn't so bad.
yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It was a great game. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, was there anything else you wanted to kind of cover before we did wrap this one up? I know we've gone a little long, and we've kind of just covered a breadth of things. So we've kind of covered a fair bit. A lot of me yapping on about things, but
That's all right. I think there is one thing that I do want to mention,
yep.
and that's Call of Duty.
Mm.
It's coming to Game Pass, and it's
Yes.
coming to Game Pass. I think as of recording, it should be tomorrow or Friday. So when this goes live, it'll
Yeah,
most likely
tomorrow. Yeah.
be it'll most likely be on Game Pass, and that's Call of Duty Black Ops 6, as well as we've already recently had Modern Warfare 3, and we've got Call of Duty Warzone. That's on there as well. But Black Ops 6 coming to Game Pass day one is going to be very interesting because if you remember, so back in 2023, in order to get the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, Microsoft had to agree to give like the distribution rights, or I think it was distribution or streaming rights or something like that, to for Call of Duty.
Streaming.
They had to streaming rights. They had to sell it off, and they sold it off to Ubisoft. Now Ubisoft, in this case, has sold the rights back to Microsoft. Yes, I don't screw your face up. I looked this up. So Ubisoft has the streaming rights to Call of Duty Black Ops 6. They have sold those rights, or at least or rented those rights out to Microsoft, so that way they can have Black Ops 6 come day one on Game Pass. Because as an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, you will be able to stream it.
The cloud rights.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So basically, they like Microsoft could not have these rights to
Yeah.
get the sale across, so they sold it off to Ubisoft, and they're like, "Oh, for this game, you can have it back."
Yeah.
So basically,
Okay.
nothing's happened really.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
They got it at the end. Yeah,
I guess
have a look.
I
And
guess it's probably
you'll grind your teeth.
probably not the terminology, right? Like they haven't sold the rights back. They've just given them the rights for this game.
Well, that's
Like,
what that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
it's
know what you mean. I'm just
Giving
so
them
you
the
don't get
rights,
the one
but
guy in the
they had to-
comment
they had to
going,
pay for it.
yeah.
Or the one guy.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting. I mean, this is a big test bed, right? Like, if anything's going to prove kill or not Game Pass, it's Call of Duty. It's one of the biggest games in the world, one of the biggest releases each year. It's going to be super interesting to see the effect on what what Call of Duty does to Game Pass.
So I can tell you what it's going to look like from both ends.
Yeah,
So
go
let's
for
say
it.
let's say that this is successful. If Call of Duty Black Ops 6 launching day one on Game Pass, also available for streaming for Ultimate subscribers, if it is successful for Call of Duty and they consider it a success. So the way that we would deem it successful, I would say, is probably active users, Game Pass subscriber intake. Like that's probably going to be our best metrics to measure on, which we can't get, but
Yeah.
that's what internally that's what Microsoft would be looking at. Then they'll be talking about how Game Pass is a juggernaut and that how like some powers need to be stripped. If Call of Duty is a failure and that it doesn't give a bump in subscribers and that it sells well on PlayStation but nobody's really playing it on Xbox or whatever it may be, I can tell you right now the storyline will most likely be that well, the last Call of Duty we had, which was Modern Warfare 3, which was the sequel to the remake of Modern Warfare 2 or reboot or whatever, that was one of the lower selling Call of Duty games of all time in recent time and was considered a commercial failure. And now, of course, because that was a commercial failure, Black Ops 6 will be a commercial failure.
See,
I think there's going to be a storyline either way.
I think this is my view on it. I think the story is going to be positive initially, and what I mean by that is Black Ops typically sells well. Like the Black Ops name is nearly as big as Call of Duty. Like that typically means sales, right? So I think what they will probably want to look at internally is what money comes in from Call of Duty in any given year, and that incorporates copies sold plus microtransactions. X number, right? That's the combined number that we typically see each year. Obviously, they're going to see a decrease in sales, but what they're, I guess, hoping for is a bump in Game Pass and then more people playing the game and spending more on microtransactions. So as long as that number is higher or thereabouts to what Call of Duty typically does, I think they will see that as a win. Because I think their biggest fear is like people sign to Game Pass or have Game Pass, play it, and then don't spend $1 on it. And it's just added for free, in quotes. Or people sign to Game Pass, play it for a month, and then drop out. So I think my view on it is what's going to happen. The game's going to launch. Xbox are going to say, this has been our most successful launch into Game Pass in terms of new subscribers, which is, I don't think anyone was going to doubt that wouldn't be the case.
Well, it's not going to be Starfield or Halo.
No, that will be the news, and that will be it. They will not talk sales
about it.
Yeah, it will just be like, it was the biggest launch in any game in Game Pass history. We saw the biggest increase in new subscribers. There's more people playing Call of Duty this year than previous years. And then that will have people on both sides debating. You'll have the Xbox guys saying, there you go, look, it's still making money, blah, 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 blah. And then the PlayStation guys are just going to be arguing that the fact that, yeah, there's more people playing it, but it doesn't mean it's more profitable, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think we're ever going to...
doesn't make a profit, right?
Yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to get that level of information. But I think we're going to hear the good news story out of Microsoft. We saw that with Halo and stuff, right? Like, they say that, even though Halo's development and post-development and post-launch has been a bit of a disaster, the initial thing was like, even Starfield, right? We saw an increase in subscribers. So that's going to be the case. The only way we'll know if it's a real success is if we get updated Game Pass numbers next year, and it's like it's gone from 30 to 35 or whatever to 50 million or 40 million. And it's like, well, we actively increased and then kept those subscribers, and Call of Duty made the same amount of money, if not more, than it has in previous years.
Well, we'd also probably be waiting on the Activision Blizzard investor
financial.
Financial.
Yeah.
Like, because at least they're going to have to say, well, okay, well, this is like, we can have a look and see what the breakdown was from the year before to the current year, and you can compare that to previous Black Ops releases. And
well, that's where it gets a little tricky, where they would have had an Activision ABK investors call where they would have those questions. Now it's going to be absorbed into Microsoft. So,
or would they still do it individually though? Don't they? Still
they might. They would ask. They would be like, "Well, how did Call of Duty perform?" And they're going to answer basically what I just said. We saw the biggest increase in Game Pass numbers, and the most players playing the game that we've ever seen. Like that type of response. So unless this goes completely bonkers, in both directions, like I said, people sign up and then unsub, or don't sign up and don't play, then that's going to be an interesting thing to follow. But my prediction is, hey, it's the most people playing the game. Hey, it's the most subscriber increase. But unless we see next year a update to the Game Pass numbers and it's sizable, then that will determine it. My prediction is we'll see an increase maybe over November, December, January, but I don't see this carrying on, because I think there's an audience who buys Call of Duty every year and that's what they play, maybe that and one or two other games. I think those people will still just buy the game, because over the course of a year, if that's what you're playing as your primary game and you're not really playing anything else, it's actually cheaper to just buy the game, which Microsoft's happy with. So I think that's going to happen. There's going to be new people. There's going to be the Game Pass people who are already subscribed who are going to play it because, hey, it's Call of Duty and it's there and I've already got Game Pass. And there will be people like, maybe if I wasn't so caught up in what I was playing at the moment, that would also sign up just to play it. But unless those people are staying subscribed, I mean, you get $15 out of me to play for a month, but that's $70 or $55, $60, $70 less than you would have got if I purchased it. So I don't think we'll ever know. I think they will know. They'll definitely know. But just expect most played, most increase the Game Pass numbers. But unless we get next year updated numbers for Game Pass
subscribers,
that will be the key. And if we hear nothing, that means didn't work.
See, I think we'll probably hear it maybe February. I'm thinking after Avowed. I think if it's positive and they're going to tell us, I reckon they'll wait till after Avowed because they want to talk their first party titles.
Yeah,
They'll do it after
they'll
that.
probably wait to, I would say, maybe the end of Q1, and then they do their,
So end of March.
yeah, they'll do their quarterly. And that
Well,
will get asked. That will get asked, 100% to your point. That will get, how did Call of Duty affect Game Pass?
See, I reckon that's also leads into a topic that we could do on another show. Is like, these sorts of figures. Is it better for us to have transparency on like subscriber numbers and that sort of stuff, or is it better to kind of have them in the smoke and mirrors sort of show, and we just have to speculate?
My view on it is, and it's kind of actually changed over the past year or years.
Do you want to keep it for another podcast?
No, it's literally short. It's literally in the sense that like, we don't need to know. We never asked this for anything else in terms of like Netflix. It's just, it is what it is. But it's up to the people who are talking on podcasts or on YouTube who are doing these things to just use a little bit of an IQ and some research and not just go off what they tell us. Because, and this is for all three of the big three, right? Because they all just tell us what we want to hear and they're not telling us what is happening behind the scenes. Nor should they. Why would they? They're not going to be like, sign to Game Pass and all the ads and then come out in an interview with IGN and be like, we're losing so much money, man, behind the scenes. And, why would they do that? So they're going to just say what is factually true, but don't just take it on face value. Again, when they said that Game Pass was profitable, everyone out there was saying that this means Game Pass is profitable. And this means that, it is working and it's sustainable. But we didn't know what profitable meant. Were they taking into account the actual game development and the cost of running studios? Probably not. If they're talking money in and money out, well then yes, it was profitable. But just use your IQ a little bit, people, and just shift through the bullshit. And
no, they're looking at titles of articles. They're not looking at the actual meat and potatoes.
Yeah, and that's half the problem. So anyway, that's enough of that. Yeah. I'd say.
All right.
Okay, host. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just like, this hay fever's really taking me out for a whack. But thank you for listening. It has been quite I think a really good show. It's good to catch up. We haven't spoken in a while, and plenty's gone on both camps, and we'll be back to our usual fortnightly cadence. So you're actually lucky we recorded this one a little late, so this will be up in the morning tomorrow morning. So we're gonna do some work behind the scenes to get this one up and running. But thank you for listening. This has been episode 14 of Busy Playing Something. I've been your host for this evening, Joshua LaRosa, joined by Sean Harron. Again, find us on YouTube at Busy Playing Something, podcast feeds, Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Busy Playing Something, 5-star us, all that fun things. You can find us on Twitter at busy_playing, myself at Joshua LaRosa, and Sean at Holly DePrawn. We'll see you next fortnight. Stay active, stay sexy, if you can. And, look up some photos of Donald Trump working at McDonald's, because let me tell you, I thought that was AI art. And then when I realized that that was real, man, politics aside, that man is funny. Like, he's hilarious.
But I just want to mention two things about that, by the way, before we wrap up.
Yeah.
About Trump working at McDonald's. So two things. So firstly, the only reason he worked at the McDonald's is because he's jumping on the fact that he thinks Kamala Harris didn't work at McDonald's and she said she did.
Yeah.
So because he thinks that's the case, he's jumping on. He's like, oh, I'm going to work at McDonald's. I'll show her up.
It's nearly Larry David level of like spite, right? It's like, you didn't actually work there, so I'm going to prove it somehow by going there and working there.
It's an Arrested Development skit. And the second part of it is that he didn't actually work there. There was the signs out the front of the store, like on the windows and stuff, saying, "Hey, we're going to be closed from like 11." Oh yeah,
it was all his supporters.
Yeah, it was like, we're closed from 11 to 4 because we've got President Trump coming out. Like, we're not into politics, but like, it's good for the area, yada yada yada. So like, he didn't even cook fries for anybody.
It was just all the supporters that came through, and then they're like, "You took a bullet for us, Mr. President." Oh, America. Anyway. God bless yous. All right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in a fortnight. Catch.